Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this out there on the World Wide Web. This is Jeremy Geelan for SYS-CON TV here with our Cloud Computing Power Panel. A lot of people have waited for the next one. Here it is. I have with me 4 experts, as ever, but the cloud has moved along since last time. So I wonder if, as you introduce yourselves, if you don't mind my asking you to do that, whether you could perhaps tell us, did you maybe on the way to our Times Square studio have any kind of cloudy encounter, anything that reinforced that cloud computing is here? I'm going to start, if I may, with Peter Coffey. Peter, please introduce yourself, and I don't know if you can answer that in real time, but have a go.
Thank you. Yeah, actually I can. I'm Peter Coffey. I'm Director of Platform Research at Salesforce.com, and I was sitting on a plane at Logan Airport in Boston this morning, thinking, I wonder if I've made a mistake in assuming that there will be train service on Sunday coming in from JFK to the city.
Right.
I'm used to coming in on weekdays. I was able to pull a device out of my pocket, pull up a web browser, Google for the Long Island Railroad timetable page, find a phone number, call them and talk to a very nice voice response system, which told me not only the interval, but even the exact times of the trains that I would find waiting for me at Jamaica Station. So it was a supremely cloudy experience, Jeremy.
And I wonder whether that's true of Catherine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kind of good luck that something happened to you on the way to the studio?
Absolutely. My name is Catherine Minter. I'm president of Cordis in the Americas. And today, actually, having it be a Sunday, my kids were going to go to the museum with their grandparents. And it's kind of a last-minute thing. So on, again, my mobile device, I pulled up a browser to pull up the schedules of the times that were opening, whether there was tickets required to be purchased. Through that, was able to actually secure a reservation for them and then send an email in terms of scheduling and transportation, all from my car on the phone in a matter of minutes. So yes, it was a very cloudy experience on my way into New York today.
Vince, were you cloudy on the way to New York?
Actually, I had a surprising experience. And Vince Ray, I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Architect for CA. And I actually happen to live local, about 50 miles east from here.
I live in the cloud.
Well, it feels that way sometimes. But I normally would take the train, and I looked at the schedules, and it just didn't line up for me. So I decided I would use a car service, and it got to be last minute. I hadn't called them, and I speak to the fellow who owns the car service. And it turns out he's located in Florida, and he uses a cloud system to pair riders with drivers. And in literally 30 seconds, he says, Vince, I've got a driver for you. He can get you there in time. Here's the name. Here's when he'll pick you up. I mean, it was an amazing experience. No phone calls, none of that. Very, very interactive. Wonderful, wonderful thing.
3 out of 4. I'm not sure my luck is going to hold, but Sam, welcome. It's not possible that 4 out of 4 of you have in some way come here via the cloud.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. Sam Gross, Vice President, Global IT Outsourcing Solutions for Unisys Corporation. And quite frankly, I think we all live in the cloud today, and many of us have a good sense of it. Many of us just take it for granted. I mean, from keeping up with my Twitter to location-based services on my mobile phone to, quite frankly, my expense reports, just making sure that everything is tidied up before Monday hits. So yes, I've been in the cloud today as well, Jeremy.
Well, let's have a little think about that. I can't help noticing you said we all live in the cloud today. And I know that people are listening to this at home and they're saying, hang on, those 4 examples weren't the cloud, they were just the internet. So how do we stop up and make people understand that, I mean, it may just be gradual, but what is it that is completely different when you refer to those experiences as being cloud-enabled that isn't just, the internet's a cool thing?
Well, we had an experience just this week where the regional orchestra, for which I function as database administrator, sent me a memo saying, oh, by the way, Monday morning is the day when we put out the mailing of the next bulletin. You'll be able to do the mailing labels, won't you? And I had one of those horrible moments of, no, in fact, I will not be anywhere near home for the next week and a half, and thought, what am I going to do about this? And then I remembered that about a year ago, I migrated us off of a proprietary piece of software that ran on one PC in one board member's home to a web-based spreadsheet to maintain our mailing list data. I was able to pull that down, do the mail merge, generate the PDF, and send it to the person who prints the labels, and problem solved. And if we had not moved to a web-based, cloud-based repository of that data, I would have been stuck in the old world of where the data is matters, and now the data is wherever I need it to be.
Right, so I get this. So this is great, and it's better. And I'm thinking, that doesn't scale. It doesn't scale. Does it scale, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. It scales in a bunch of different ways. I'm going to go back to the example I gave you at the start. I mean, this is small business doing big company IT things, right? This is, yeah, and I don't know who their providers are, what applications they're using, but they're able to deliver a user experience that's right up there with the big guys, even though it's, 5 guys running a car service.
So is that one of the things, Kathy? Is it this? I mean, one of the things that catches a lot of people's attention is startups, and VCs are back, and energy is high. Is that something that's driving all of this?
I mean, I have a perfect example of just in a personal colleague of mine who's starting up a small business, and someone from, in terms of from her home, and would never have access to kind of the global resources and computing capability that normally a startup would have. She's starting up a t-shirt of a clothing company. And just so happened she was trying to sell individually to boutique, to boutique, to boutique. And one of her friends actually had picked it up and sent a note on Facebook. And it so happens that someone that we had prior gone to high school with years and years ago had picked that up, and he's a producer in Hollywood for a show that picked up her t-shirt through Facebook, then put the t-shirt as a placement on the show through content and media, so then you get all of that around. And then through Twitter and other things, she had kind of sent the news around. So now she's gone from in her living room, making this to getting a large order, and now worried about manufacturing capability and how is that going to happen. So again, she's going to be leveraging capabilities in the cloud. So it's really a proliferation of, multiple platforms and things coming together in the cloud versus just one cloud. It's really the formulation of new communities and frameworks that are possible that weren't possible before. And that's really how I think it's going to scale.
All right, let's take that example then, because a new community, to take that example, and something that's scaled. Twitter, you're all, actually,
yes.
There's so much Twittering going on, but so would that have been possible? Because I'm sure a lot of people wonder this. They might not be thinking technology day and night, but they're probably wondering, I wonder, I've heard about that cloud computing thing, and I can't help noticing that like Twitter and Facebook and Flickr and Netflix, I wonder if those two things aren't just coincidental. I'm sure there are a lot of people who just don't know the answer to that question. Are they coincidental, Sam, or is this boost something to do with what we're all just giddily talking about as cloud computing?
Well, we talk about cloud as if it's really something new, as opposed to really being, in fact, a aggregation, a coalescence, and an evolution of technologies that have been changing IT for the last 5-10 years. Quite frankly, web was a very important piece. Obviously, the internet, the browser itself, but quite frankly, the concept of the data center in the sky. And the thing that, we spend a lot of time when we talk about how all of this is going to impact small businesses and medium businesses and individuals and cost of entry to get into a marketplace. But in fact, for major corporations to really begin to understand that these investments that have been made for, umpteen years now are really coming together and changing the face of how we do the work that we do. It is no longer this mechanism that is locked inside a data center with some voodoo and some kind of guys who speak gobbledygook, but in fact a part of our life, a part of how all of this technology comes together and creates a real return, real agility in business, and a whole new cost structure around getting business done.
Jeremy, if I could build on that, there's often a question that's addressed to me is, isn't this just another label for the outsourcing that we've had for years? And I think if there's one defining difference between cloud computing and mere outsourcing, it's that the flexible allocation of capacity among a large pool of customers, so that any given customer is only paying at any moment for the capacity that they're using, and yet the aggregate load is still predictable enough that a service provider can provision that load. That's a remarkable combination that creates important business opportunity. I can give you
because I could outsource, but I'd have to keep going.
Right. I can give you an example. When President Obama was campaigning on a message of renewed commitment to national service, After he was elected, one of our customers, Starbucks, thought, wait a minute, what if we build on that idea and say, we will help you find community service opportunities in your neighborhood, and if you do 5 hours of community service, we will give you a free drink at your local store. They were able to build a site that pulled on APIs, pulled from other cloud sources of directories of service organizations and opportunities, manifest a website that you could go to and find these opportunities, sign up, put the whole thing together so that it was ready to go live on Inauguration Day, which you would not have been able to do if you had to procure hardware and configure a data center to do this. But by invoking services, this was possible. Then they got some love for this on Oprah and had an enormous spike of traffic as a result, which the cloud was able to help them deal with. But after things settled down to more of an equilibrium level, they didn't have a lot of hardware that they were no longer finding value from because they just cut back on their use of the service and they cut back on the cost. So you have these amazing combinations of business benefits of agility, I think that was the word you just used, the ability to respond very quickly on a massive scale to an opportunity without incurring an overhead of capital and software licenses and such that cost you after they've stopped being valuable to you. That really, to me, is what the cloud promise means.
Sometimes surprised that, you talked about data center in the sky, and that's kind of cute, if you don't mind my saying. But I'm going to say to Peter, are you not surprised that the notion of elastic IT didn't stick instead of cloud computing? Because what you've described seems to me elastic IT would have been a much better metaphor.
The origin of the label of cloud computing is very interesting. If you use Google Trends, you can find out when various phrases came into a vogue on the internet, look for how they were as search traffic. If you look for the phrase cloud computing, you'll see it was virtually absent from the search stream before 2007. Yeah. It starts to pick up around early 2007. It's quite well established in early 2008. It wasn't until the end of 2008 that the industry really started to use it. Mm-hmm. We were still calling it utility computing or as a service or whatever. Mm-hmm. I believe the market came up with the name for the experience that consumers of the capability wanted to have, and then industry figured out that's what they want to call it, we'd better adopt that label ourselves. I don't believe the industry drove the label. I believe the community described the experience they wanted, and then we figured out, okay, we'd better provide that experience.
I know you've been dying to jump in.
No, it was interesting because just building on those 2 points, I think what hasn't been really talked about is the ability to create dynamic business processes in the cloud.
Yes.
So it's not only the, expanding from BPO and expanding from obviously the bottom line savings that go from cloud computing, it's opening up all new business models in the cloud. So just a perfect example is an insurance company that has a BPO right now for their claims adjusters. You get into a car accident, you take your car into the local dealer, you're trying now, it's the visibility that's created now from creating a process that connects the consumer, the car dealer itself, the body shop, the agent and the insurance company very quickly now at a low cost can create a process through cloud computing. So that includes SMS messages and scheduling and emails to facilitate that process. And at the end of the line, what that does for the insurance company is bottom line gives them visibility into their end consumer, so customer satisfaction can go up, also cost and cycle times go down. And then, for the business process outsourcer, it gives visibility into what are they actually doing for the business. Can you manage the metrics and get more visibility?
And this makes a really important point, which is that if you sell the cloud internally as a cost reduction strategy, you will be completely missing what you've just heard described. Because if you think of it as a value creation strategy and elevating the level of service that the customer should expect, the reason why we spend more on IT today than we did 10 years ago, even though Moore's Law says the costs should be going down, is because the ROI keeps getting so good.
It's okay to spend more.
And the expectation of quality of service is so rapidly rising. And that's exactly what she's just been describing to you, is a dramatic enhancement of the customer experience made feasible by the flexibility and agility of the cloud, but probably raising rather than lowering gross IT spending. Right. Because the ROI is so compelling.
But for all of this to really take root, cloud computing needs to find itself well embedded in the middle of the corporate IT data center as opposed to the edges.
Yes.
And what we have today is we have a lot of people who are dipping their toes in the water and they're, I have a little application, I have a little project, I have a little this, I'm going to do a little dev test, I'm going to do these types of things. But at the end of the day, in order for that real benefit to be found and realized by business, It's got to find itself routed right in the middle of the corporate data center. In order for that to happen, there's a whole number of challenges that need to be understood. And how are they solved? How are they addressed? Who are the providers? What are the technologies? And how do we really make that happen? So, you know, why are we poking around the edges? Because we don't necessarily understand what's really in the core.
Sam, who in the enterprise is driving it right now?
Who in the enterprise is driving it?
And should someone else be, or should more people be? I mean, what call to action can we offer to people watching that, you know, you can help this faster, better, all those good things?
Well, I think at the end of the day, if you really step back and you look at it, managed services in the IT industry will never be the same as they were before cloud computing.
Yes.
They will change. And the people who really need to drive it are those providers, the people that businesses have put their trust in and have said, please run my data center, please deliver best practices, please deliver best cost. Absolutely. And these are the guys who have to stand up and actually have to make it happen. They have to drive their customers into that space in a courageous way, with the right type of technical leadership, security leadership, and quite frankly, cultural change that really impacts all of that, because that has sat, you talk about 2007 and 2008 and 2009, the value hasn't been different. There's no difference in value from those years.
Right.
What is that?
The acceptance and the recognition. Yeah, the enterprise was led into the cloud by business units that felt they had to have the rapid time to value and the flexibility. But now the data center is discovering, wait a minute, this does seem to be secure enough. This does seem to have real capacity and reliability. There is no reason why these practices should not be informing all of our processes and not merely the ones that the aggressive VP of sales, you know, may have been leading the adoption.
When I listen to you, when I listen to all of you, when I listen to Kathy and you, I'm wondering, I mean, we're not looking for barriers to cloud computing, and we'll get on to security.
Some people are.
But
some people are.
I'm
some people are
wondering
looking for excuses to defer the adoption.
The sheer energy that you described, Kathy, the sheer possibilities that Peter's alluding to within a business. Well, I mean, businesses aren't very good at change in general. So is there this sort of, you know, inverse ratio between the potential of the cloud is so bewildering that there's a possibility of something, you know, I can't get my head around it, I can't get my arms around it. So what do we do there to help people who are watching?
Well, the last year has
bottom line is
shaken a lot of
it's
people
top
loose
down,
on that.
right? So if a company's going to change anything, it's got to be from the top down.
Because that's a corporate.
Right. It's the senior
it is.
executive. So right now there's been a recession. There's not a lot of risk taking that's been happening just in business today. So the major brands and, you know, influential providers in the business that have been a trusted advisor to the C-level executives over the past several years are the ones that ultimately are going to help to initiate change. And at this point, there's been a number of companies kind of putting their big toe in the water in terms of, am I going to go into my, you know, CEO or CTO and tell them to go with cloud computing or start to initiate. But I think that that's happening. This is here to stay. The companies who do it sooner are going to be the ones, you know, moving forward. The other ones are going to be left in the dust. So I think, you know, right now, I think the service providers, some of the large, you know, trusted companies that have been dealing are going to be ones to lead this, you know, influential change.
Telcos?
Exactly, like the large telecommunications, communications.
Telcos are discovering the opportunity because they're realizing, wait a minute, computers, okay, those are discrete units of technology and their cost in general falls. Network management is a profound skill and one that involves immense fixed assets. And the telcos are saying, wait a minute, how can we become the real agents of this?
Yes.
It will be interesting to see how they try to assert that leadership, given that we all know that actually running data centers and scalable business processes isn't as easy as we've been making it look.
Right. It's very different.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the telcos are tremendously interested in this, but there is this one fundamental problem with that proposition, which is the cloud allows us to exploit the internet, which is free. And the telcos make their money on leased lines.
Yeah.
And that, quite frankly, is a problem. So is no question about the fact that they have the capital, that they have the infrastructure to deliver those services. The question is exactly how does that value proposition lay out? Do they have the expertise in running applications and in running data centers? And the reality is no. Do they have the skills to run the network? Absolutely. But do we want them to run the network, or do we want to take advantage of the internet? The internet is such a profound component of cloud computing.
Indeed. Yeah.
Right? So these are two mutually exclusive concepts.
So that could
or
be,
alternatively, they are complementary concepts. I mean, what we're seeing is that it's an ecosystem. It's not a list of vendors. It's a ecosystem where you're absolutely right. The one big cloud is the global, non-proprietary, highly reliable, secureable, not inherently secure, but it can be used in a secure way, environment of the internet. And yes, in that environment, many interesting things are going to happen.
if we founded, the five of us this evening, cloudvalue.com, I'm sure someone owns it, and everybody chipped in,
Yeah.
would the telcos chip in on your scenario, or would they say, no, this is either or, this is a zero-sum game? Because I think there will be people watching who are saying, well, I have been hearing a little about this telco play, and now I'm wondering where that's all going to go.
Well,
would they chip in? I mean, is it?
You know, the question is it even fair to pick on the telcos? Here's the reality. The players of today will not be the players of tomorrow. There will be a new set of players in this business. That is the challenge.
Timescale. Give me a timescale. 5, 10?
Oh, well, you know, that's always the argument, right? I'm the optimist. I believe it's going to happen very quickly. I believe that we're going to see major change within the next, quite frankly, 4 or 5 years.
Right,
period.
so that's a strong message. Does that make sense, Peter? Stuff is going on that fast?
My hope is for more of a mutually beneficial relationship with the telcos. For example, British Telecom resells Salesforce.com CRM as part of its small business offering. You know, think about it from a pure business model point of view. Telcos have their foot, or maybe more, in the door of almost every business.
So there are all these little strategic
So why
alliances,
shouldn't they be coming to those of us who provide application agility, data center management skills, and making this part of their small business suite, enterprise suite, whatever. So there's opportunities to think of them as a channel for the sale of cloud services. Because let's remember, clouds are fundamentally services, not technologies that you deliver, but services that you provide.
Telcos are looking for a bigger piece than the channel.
They would love to have a bigger piece.
Right, absolutely. So again, you still
but
have
I'm happy to have them as my channel partner.
Of course you are, but it's a mutually exclusive relationship. I mean, the key is this has to build itself inside, and I continue to say, inside of enterprise IT, not around the edges. And channel strategies for the telcos is a way of dealing with it, beginning to understand it. But it's not making the fundamental change that we owe our clients.
Yeah.
And in
that inside-out adaptation is almost the opposite of what you were just saying. It was interesting to me when you said that you saw people becoming more risk-averse in the last year, because in many environments, I've had conversations where people seemed more willing to venture into new waters, because the environment is one that demands bold action.
Right.
They're saying if we're going to be viable 3 years from now,
well, you
we
use
need
the
to do
word
something
courage.
different now.
How many technology discussions quite naturally have used the word courage? I think that is something.
It hasn't been a word you've heard a lot, but in the last year people have been saying this is a time to dare to do what we have not done before.
To comment on the service provider, because I disagree somewhat in terms of the role of the telcos going forward, because I think they're actually going to be very interested, number one, in being that place that small businesses and large businesses can go up the value chain. They have to move up the value chain or they're going to be completely eliminated. So it's out of force of necessity to be able to provide applications, and just by their nature and their history, they are the best at providing for enterprises service level agreements, 5 nines of reliability, entry into and the history of providing the reliability and scalability and performance of a network. So when that comes into the cloud world, I think that they're a natural player to take a much larger role actually in this space going forward. So.
And that's, but I'm hearing the tension between, are they going to be carrying the water for we who know how to do IT, or are they going to become the owner of the casino and we're just going to be dealing at the tables?
Right. You know? Maybe just for the enterprise. I mean, maybe in a certain segment that requires that, but then the proliferation of other potential cloud offerings through different channels. So,
but here's the deal. You spend enough years in this business and you see history repeat itself again and again and again. And we had exactly the same drumbeat when storage area networking was the big thing, right? All the telcos were going to be the storage service provider, and they were all lining up, buying gads and gads of SAN, and at the end of the day, where was that? What happened with that? So I don't want to suggest that, I have a crystal ball and I don't think the telcos are going to make it. I think that what we've really seen in the industry, particularly in the managed service industry, particularly around Generation 3 outsourcing and the whole concept of, look, you're good at this, I want you to do that, you're good at that, I want you to do the other, and you're good at the third, and you'll do the third. And I believe that that is here to stay. And by the way, the cloud represents exactly that kind of a model where clouds consume other clouds, consume other clouds. So will the telcos have a place? Absolutely. Will they take over the data center business? They haven't in the past, they probably won't in the future. And, you know, I think the reality is that we're going to find those key cores of competence remain in the industry, those who change, who have the courage to make the change, lead their customers, lead the industry, make the kinds of investments that have to be made. They will be the winners. Those who sit on the sidelines will not.
And I think that's key, because it used to be your physical presence was 9/10 of your victory. Your network was there.
That's
your
right.
mainframes were sitting there. But now the people expect to have more of a consumption of services relationship instead of a purchase of hardware relationship. They really get to vote with their wallets to a degree that they have not before about who's going to be calling the signals. If I want to buy cloud computing services from my telco, I can tell them that, and then they can go out and purchase them and resell them. Conversely, if I want to buy network management services from my cloud computing provider, I can tell them that I want that, and they'll go into the marketplace and buy them. I get to decide who I want to write my check to and who is going to become the reseller of other people's services. So your ability to become a valued service provider to me now becomes more important than the massive hardware that you have on my premises in terms of establishing who's going to be the leader.
I don't want to sidetrack the discussion or any of you, but I'm sure as people are listening to this and they say, wow, it's all a lot further along than I understood. I mean, these guys are just, there's no barriers whatsoever. We want to make sure that we don't completely whiz by the preoccupations that we are hearing about.
Sure.
So how about if someone is watching and say, yeah, I've heard there's some pretty dodgy aspects of multi-tenancy that, you know, we can think of some pretty egregious examples. What are we saying, Sam, to those people about the Chinese walls, about data at rest, data on the... let's make sure that we address and not just dismiss, but perhaps explain where we are on some of those really basic... You're all talking of these interoperabilities just solved. That's what I'm hearing, which is wonderful. But is it? I just don't want anyone to be able to say, I don't know, they were just a load of cloudies. They were just like, you know what I mean? They were cloudiacs. They're not. You guys are doing it with all the caution of professionals. That's the takeaway I want viewers to be able to have. So what about the basic things, without us labouring the points? What are they and how are they being dealt with, so that we can have the confidence, good, it's all being taken care of.
Right. The two key areas that keep on coming up again and again. Obviously, the top item is security. It doesn't matter which survey you look at, the numbers are different.
Yeah, you don't have to, it is.
Right.
So where are we on that?
Well, the reality is that it requires a whole new set of technologies that we haven't been using in the traditional data center space. And I think one of the challenges that we have in this business is people keep on applying the same concepts that we had for multi-tenancy in a managed service, network security, and other types of basic kinds of encryption. And the fact is that what we now need to do is bring a whole new layer of security into the cloud. What we need to really focus on is the security of people's data, of the corporate data, this whole concept of taking virtual private networks and raising it up to the data layer, this concept of the virtual private data network. So a whole new set of technologies. And, you know, quite frankly, for us at Unisys, when we took a look at the whole cloud issue, 2007 and 2008 and 2009, and looked at it, that's the problem that's not solved. And that is the problem that we have solved. And that's the problem that more companies need to look at. We need the introduction of additional technologies. We, of course, offer the stealth technology in our secure cloud. There will be others in the future. I don't know how long that'll take. But that must happen.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's not about firewalls.
No. No, there are no perimeters anymore, because clouds, at the risk of overextending the metaphor, clouds do not have rigid boundaries.
Mutually exclusive.
And if all your data is accessible to partners or customers under appropriately assigned privileges, well, every piece of data had better know who its daddy is. You don't have a perimeter where inside the perimeter you're trusted and outside the perimeter you're not. Every piece of data in almost every access act needs to say, should you be allowed to see me? oh, okay,
Right.
yes, you at this time from this address with this credential, yes, you can see me, but under other circumstances, maybe you can't. So the data level, rather than the physical boundary, needs to be key. When you design something for a multi-tenant environment from the bottom up, you will bake in these notions of massive shareability with rigorous assignment of privilege. And if you try to figure out how to take something that was never designed for that world and make it secure in the cloud, you'll put layers and layers and layers of lipstick on that peg, but it's not going to be.
And again, Peter,
what you want.
You got your ear to the ground.
Yeah.
Is that going on? Are there people, who frankly,
you know what I've noticed
a
in the
legacy
last year?
system that they're trying to cloudify? And
what I've seen in the last year is the people who used to say the cloud's not secure now say something very subtly different. They say, well, the perception that the cloud is not secure may be a barrier to your project. They don't say the cloud's not secure. They say, well, you'll be fighting the perception of cloud security, to which I sometimes say, yes, but 80% of Americans believe the government is concealing alien landings, too.
Right.
Let me talk about facts instead of perceptions, and we'll be better off. But
they
that
do
said,
have
the
facts,
perception
right?
remains a fundamental
The
issue.
perception is a big issue, but also there are very few technologies that have been brought out on the market that really will secure cloud data in a multi-tenant network. And in fact, part of the problem that we have is we really look at a lot of cloud technology, and at the end of the day, it's a bunch of fancy orchestration and provisioning technologies. And so those fundamentals really need to be addressed, right? That's part of the issue. And I'll tell you, the next issue is around the whole concept of service management. I think that the second big problem that we have in this industry is that all of these clouds that stand up almost in this tower-like fashion, right? And one of the things that we've been fighting for years in IT is to get rid of the towers, is to, our users consume technology in a horizontal fashion. The stories that we all told as we started up this panel talked about the horizontal consumption of technology, right? And so we have to get rid of the towers, and we have to understand, clouds need to understand that whoever is the first primary cloud that faces off with a client needs to understand the concept of service management, right? We can't pretend that our clients don't have service management embedded into their organization and processes and policies, and they want to understand the availability. They want to be able to make a request through the standard way that they request any component in their enterprise. So it's security, and it's really meshing into the service management infrastructure of enterprise IT that will actually take cloud to the next level. Those, and there are far and few providers that actually do that, those are the guys who I think are on the front of the industry.
We crossed a key threshold ourselves when we realized that more than half of the work being done by Salesforce.com's back-end systems was being done in response to requests that came in through our API from affiliated applications and services, rather than simply servicing the workload of our own packaged software as a service products. And so, yes, that horizontal interoperability now is, in fact, more than half of our business.
More than half. There's an interesting metric.
I think what's important to note is that, as kind of the average person would be watching this doesn't all have to be figured out in order to leverage what the cloud has today. So,
that's an important take.
Yes.
Say again, how? Why is that the
because
case?
this will get, as other things have worked themselves out over time, as you said, you've seen this story before in terms of risks and concerns and a lot of FUD in the marketplace. The bottom line is there are ways today that major companies can use private clouds, which are protecting their data within a data center and leveraging the technology that the cloud affords, but doing it in a way that's an evolution or a phased approach. So, I think a lot of companies or executives that you talk to are, okay, we can't go there because this isn't completely 100% figured out, dotted.
As if what they were doing now is.
So I think it's just, I think as a definition, security is one of those things.
Here's the bait, and I was hoping we didn't have to go there. But let me ask the question. I'll ask you the question. Do you believe that private cloud is a response that corporate IT has come up with to achieve two things? Number one, respond to the fact that they're not sure that there are providers out there who have data level security in the cloud, item number one. And item number two, they don't want to give up control.
The latter.
I think there's some regulations and compliance issues that just simply aren't figured out yet, that you have to keep your data within the premise. But I think number two, absolutely.
But should we take suckage?
Well, there's the third of your two possibilities. The third possibility is that it's a label that people who want to sell hardware have found they can put on hardware and continue to sell it. to people who want a
Absolutely.
cloud. I mean,
Well,
maybe it's more of a vendor-driven label.
Absolutely. In
than a
fact, if
market-driven
you
label.
take a really, really careful look at
Yeah.
who's really driving the
Private
cloud, I think you're going to find some tin behind it.
But when I listen to what you say, and then you go to that, and I listen to what Kathy says, I'm thinking, you are almost ideological about the fact that the cloud should be public. That's what I think. And there's
I'll tell you.
nothing wrong with that.
But
Is it because you're also sensing that that is simply what is needed and wanted? Like, that's the way this is going. Because again, remember, we're trying to tell people, where is this headed?
Is it
They've heard that
ideology or is it
private public.
existential? You know,
Well, you got to get business
Because
done.
what you're
so
saying
that's,
is, this
right.
private thing could be a bit of a red herring, guys. Just watch out for that. You'll hear a lot of this. And I think what you're saying is, so don't get, let me just explain to you why that comes.
Right.
There's actually some private agenda, not private, there's an agenda there. So just bear that in mind.
All I say to
Keep
people
your eye
is,
on this public.
all I say to people is, don't think that the cloud is technology that's being sold. Think of cloud as a model of how you want to consume and use function. And if you can get the elasticity and the agility and the economy in facilities that you own yourself, then so be it.
how is that possible?
Well,
you're
that's
as
another question.
elastic
Another
as
question.
the,
Nobody said
Another question.
if you
you're as elastic as the wall on the left, the wall on the right, the floor and the ceiling. That's how elastic you are.
But I let them come to that conclusion themselves instead of having it rammed down their throats by me.
It's amazingly right obvious, right?
Yeah.
So if you really look at the promise of the cloud, look at where we were in the web industry, right, in the early 2000s, with one web service consuming another web service, consuming another web service. That's not about the four walls of your data center, right? However, on the other hand, not to be too ideological, there is no question that
criticism.
but no, I've heard it before, and I'm very clearly, I'm on the left of cloud, right? I'm far left.
Thank you for making me look moderate.
No conservative here. But let there be no doubt that there will be applications that will remain in the data center. And ultimately, I think that when you really, really get down to it, and you talk to the people who write the code and think about this in the deepest ways, they'll all tell you that hybrid cloud is where we will end up. The problem is that today, people think that hybrid cloud means that the incidentals will be on the outside, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to really keep most of this. Why? Because I don't want to change. There is no way inside the four walls of your data center you can achieve the leverage and the utilization that you can do that you can achieve in a public cloud, right? You can't run applications during the day and grid at night. There are probably a couple of IT organizations out there, financial services, always very advanced in how they do it, let there be no doubt, but we're not talking about the kind of money that financial services puts in. I mean, it's really the story that you put out there, which is how do you change the economics? How do you bring these capabilities that just the biggest have and make it available to everybody? That's what cloud does.
I know how I answer this question, but I'd like to know how you answer it. You refer to there are applications that will not be run in the cloud.
Right.
What are the attributes of an application that will probably always be run in a data center as we know it?
Well, I think that every business will make up their mind around what that is, but I would tell you that I see it most often primarily in the ERP space. Now, the ERP industry feels differently about that, right? They're really working on kind of being in the cloud, but I think that if you really look at the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 1000, it's fairly hard-pressed to believe that they're going to throw all that out into the cloud. I also think that their most critical web storefronts will remain in the cloud. In their private data
That's
center.
interesting, because I could give you counterexamples on both of those.
But
I would agree. No, I would agree.
Isn't
That's why I said
valuable? Isn't it valuable in the context of a discussion like, isn't it valuable to allow people to understand that despite one's passion, this is an option. It's enterprise IT. It's not a religion. So it's not a question of cloud or die.
No.
It's a question of here are some benefits.
I have my own answer for the
value.
question of, well, what's not going to move to the cloud? My answer is applications in which small differences in performance have significant value in the marketplace, you will continue to make the investment to run in proprietary, finely tuned systems that are important intellectual property for you. For example, if you're running the Shanghai Stock Exchange, your trade execution engine, if it's 10 milliseconds faster than London's, is going to get you business that you otherwise would not get. I don't think you're going to run that in the cloud. You're going to build really great stuff with 20-year-old rocket scientists building those systems because that's your competitive edge. And everything else that runs the stock exchange, you will find, is more cost-effectively done by a cloud service provider, so you'll focus all of your resources in the areas that give you competitive advantage. And ultimately, that's what I think the data center will be.
Right.
It'll be the engine of competitive advantage for the firm, while all the stuff that runs the company gets handled by professionals.
You said the magic words of this panel, which is coming to an end, will be. Let's just end with that exact thought. Vince, when you're waking up in the morning, you're a passionate technologist, you're all passionate technologists, what is the thing that will be, for you, that you're most looking forward to? That, you know, this is like, this validates my wanting to be in technology and devote, you know, decades of my life to it. Is there an intersection of that and all the things we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, and I think
you're like sort of coming to the boil now.
This has been a common thread in a lot of the discussion. Right? A lot of what we're describing here is very similar to what went on in manufacturing. Right? You go from running a closed factory to an open supply chain.
Right.
And then it's not so much about how you run the factory and what you build in it. It's about sourcing in other places, being flexible, and the value add by gluing the pieces together. That's really what IT becomes. And I think that's a fundamental mind shift change.
And why is it that one celebrates? I mean, you're an architect. Why is that something that, I mean, you just like telling me about a lovely new dish. It seems that you love that idea. How do we explain that?
The reason I think it's so fundamental, and, you know, and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but it's not so much are you on the left or on the right as far as cloud adoption. It's about how do you get the discipline to make the right choices for the right reasons.
Right,
and
nothing's changed really in that respect. Right? That's always been the...
But now all of a sudden you've got infinitely more options, right? You've got hundreds of options in the cloud that you don't have in the data center.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's it. So this is really, the enthusiasm is coming from these options. Sam, what's driving you? I mean, he's saying options. He's sort of accusing you of thinking, well, there are not as many options.
He is in the middle. He's sitting in the middle, in fact. There's no question about it.
But you're adamant you've got to go to the cloud.
You have to go to the cloud. Companies have to go to the cloud. Providers have to go to the cloud. We as an industry have to go to the cloud. It is going to change everything that we do. And I'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow night.
Kathy, is it black and white?
I mean, the cloud is here to stay, no doubt, but the cloud isn't a thing or a place that you go. It's a set of technologies. It's just a tool, really, and the tool is to enable a whole era of new business models, new opportunities, new lifestyles, new way of, working and interacting. And I agree, with Vince in terms of it's not about how does it work underneath. Do people really care how the telephone was put together or how the TV works? It's that you turn it on and it's there. And so that's what my vision is, that really it makes all of our jobs kind of non-existent because it doesn't really matter how it's ending up going to work, but it's what it enables you to do. And that's kind of where my head's at.
Peter, it seems odd to be asking you will be because you've always been inventing the future, but go for it.
Cloud is here now. Companies whose names you would recognize in a moment are adopting it as the focus of their new initiatives and in many cases as a transition for existing systems. It's not a label that's going to come and go. Curves cross. Connectivity has become cheap and is not going to become more expensive. Processing has become cheap, is not going to become more expensive. People will continue to become more expensive, and so complexity will continue to be expensive and even more so over time. And that is why cloud is unstoppably going to be the dominant model for creating new value in IT. And every week you ask, what makes us eager to get up and do this in the morning? Every week I know I'm going to see the light bulb go on over the head of at least one major enterprise CIO who suddenly says, wait a minute, it's secure enough, it's reliable enough, it's capacious enough, and if I do not fully embrace it, I will not be doing my job to make my company competitive in the world where we're going to be operating.
So, if you are a CIO or you employ CIOs and you have not taken that to heart, create value using the cloud, embrace the cloud. It's not a religion, but it is here. Stop watching this power panel. Go and start implementing your cloud strategy. I want to thank you, Peter Coffey, Director of Platforms for Salesforce.com. I want to thank you, Kathy, and Vincent. We've got presidents of Cordis America. We've got chief architects of computer associates. We've got Sam, who's the director of everything you can possibly imagine, the VP of global IT outsourcing, which people will be puzzled and say, but of course, IT outsourcing, cloud. These guys know what they're talking about. These guys and lady know what they're talking about. Please go and find out more yourself. If you're not doing this, you need to start. Thank you, all of you, and thank you for watching this out there on the World Wide Web.